Hi, I am here with Michael Padgett as part of my Veterans Bridge Home interviews. If you want to first go through and just say your name and then your role here at Veterans Bridge Home.
My name's Michael Padgett. I work within our care coordination and our care navigation departments. I also am the housing program manager.
Perfect. Okay, question number one. What is your military service story or your personal connection to the armed forces?
All right, I am retired U.S. Coast Guard. I enlisted back in 1997 out of Chesapeake, Virginia, completed basic training in Cape May, New Jersey, and went on to have assignments in California, Virginia, as well as Alaska.
It's actually really cool. How was Alaska?
Awesome.
I'm going to go someday.
Out there, I went at the right age. I was 30. I was old enough that I was not interested in oh, I'm not going to have concerts or big sporting events,
Yeah.
but still young enough to be able to enjoy all the outdoor stuff like kayaking and hiking and stuff like that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. What is your specific role here at Veterans Bridge Home, and what does a typical day look like for you within the organization?
I really don't have a typical day because I do work basically within three departments. So it kind of is what is needed at the time or what's scheduled. So as a housing program manager, if that is what's needed that day a lot, that would be working with community partners such as the Mecklenburg County Continuum of Care or the Veteran Services Carolinas, um, Catholic Charities Diocese of Charlotte, and that's in doing both micro level as well as meso level housing. As a care coordinator, it's responding to whatever needs a veteran may be asking for, whether it may be for housing, food, education, employment, social enrichment, or any other thing that they come up with. And as a care navigator, it's providing mental health resources to veterans.
And then for the video, I have Matt explain what Sergeant Fox is, but could you explain the difference in the two roles? So, like, kind of like what you've told me, like when you take your hat off and stuff.
Yeah. So whenever we use the term coordinator, you are going to attempt to get resources for the clients, no matter what it is that they come in. Whenever you hear the term navigator or care navigator, it is a specialty. It's a very specific. So if you hear housing navigator, it is specific to housing. And when you hear care navigation for us, it is specific for suicide prevention, mental health resources, and like substance use resources for it. Where that care navigator may still do a little care coordination, their job is specific to that role right there. Or also at VBH, we'll have an employment navigator that, once again, is a navigator. That's that individual specific role where they may cross over a little, but they're really experts in one thing.
Awesome. And then, next question. What do you hope people truly understand about your role and where you fit into the larger mission of connecting veterans?
I, what I would like people to know is a lot of it we are out to advocate for the veteran. We're to help them be able to make their own decisions, their self determinants on what they need, and we can assist them with whether we can provide it directly or to provide them with a connection to the resource that specializes in that.
Awesome. Taking a bit of a turn here, can you take us back to your own transition out of the military? What did that moment feel like, and what was the hardest part that civilians do not always understand?
So, with my transition, I was actually a little delayed. I had retired in October in the San Francisco Bay Area, California, and knew I was going to relocate to Charlotte, but I had transitioned in late October and was waiting for my son to get out of school before we moved. So I had a kind of a two-part transition. One was staying in place where I had already been, but also navigating away from military support, such as military medicine, to where now I had to find a doctor, had to find someone that accepted my insurance, had to reestablish care, and then during the summer afterwards, made the transition to a place that I had never lived before. So I had family here, but I really didn't have roots, and I was basically starting fresh. I didn't know good areas to try to pick for schools for my son, for a good, neighborhoods to live in. Even, once again, having to reset up medical care for myself and my family in a place that I really didn't know geographically or have, social connections with.
And then, can you share a story or a specific moment? And you don't need to go into details or anything, so it can be like broad, so it can be filmed and online. That sticks in your mind and illustrates the power of the Veterans Bridge Home Collective Impact Model.
Um, yeah, we had a veteran, and this has actually been a couple years ago, that had relocated from the Pacific Northwest and came straight to Charlotte. Um, Really, he didn't have resources here. He didn't know anyone. Basically, he heard that this was a good area to live for employment, to raise families and schools. And once he got here in Charlotte, the first place he came was Veterans Bridge Home. Afterwards, we were able to assist him with finding a location to rent. We helped him through the employment process, the interviews, until he obtained employment. Though they had some income, it was still reduced, so we were able to get them food resources, we were able to get them furniture resources, household goods to get into the new place. Over the next year or so, as he was establishing himself and getting stable, during the when it became winter time, we were able to reach out to one of our partners and get him and his family clothing for the winter. And then the next summer, the same thing. And finally, he had reached a point where he was ready to go in and attempt home ownership. And through one of our programs, he was able to get assistance to where only a year and a half or so prior, he actually was living in his car with his family trying to find a place to where he was able to purchase a home, and we were able to maintain supports with him throughout that whole time.
Awesome. And then you can take a couple seconds to think about this. If you had to describe what Veterans Bridge Home means in just one word, what would you say? And then once you get it, just go ahead and say it. And then if you want to elaborate.
Community. That often we think of the individuals who just need a resource right now, but the big thing is trying to get them resources going forward so they can thrive and not just have assistance with what was affecting them at that moment, and where they may also be able to get social enrichment, build relationships within the community, and to the point to where maybe they might be the ones helping someone else out later.
Awesome. And then another question, because I just thought of this. How does being in the Coast Guard differ from being in any other branch? Like for actually being in it?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much similar. People think that the Coast Guard's going to be very different because it's not in the Department of Defense, and it lands other departments, but it's still the same structure, same pay scales. In fact, the Navy and the Coast Guard don't have the exact same ranks, and all your requirements are pretty much the same. It's just some people, because the Coast Guard is smaller, they'll assume it's not part of armed forces. I've even had people think that it was regional, where you were in the Coast Guard in California. I just thought that the Coast Guard was here in North Carolina. So people don't know a lot about it, but being in the Coast Guard would be the same as enlisting or becoming an officer in any other service.
And then are all of the Coast Guard boats like white and orange?
They're
Is that the
not.
color scheme?
The color schemes, there are a few. So anything that's over 66 feet long is called a cutter. Anything less than would be a boat. A lot of your operational cutters are white, as you often see, but the Coast Guard has a responsibility of maintaining all navigational aids within territorial waters. Those ships are all colored black, And then also we do have our polar class ships, our icebreakers, that go out and they're painted red. Then the boats, some of them will be orange, some white, some will just be the color of the metal with it because of just how they're set up. They're not supposed to be painted.
Awesome. And then is there anything else you want to add on camera?